And now, please welcome our panelists for today's discussion. Eric Kaler, President of Case Western Reserve University. April Miller BOISE, Executive Vice President and Chief Legal Officer at Intel Corporation. TRACI FORRESTER, Executive Vice President, Environmental and Sustainability at Cleveland Cliffs. And Dr. James A. KENYON, Director of NASA's Glenn Research Center.
Well, it's always nice to have a walk-on song. That's a pretty good one, if I say so myself. Welcome to our discussion this afternoon. We're, of course, going to try to build on the theme of inspired invention and innovation that you've heard about already so wonderfully from our Lieutenant Governor. We want to celebrate our success, and of course, we want to talk about how to open roads to even more. So our panel, as you see, represents individuals from four important sectors. First, the academic sector, where we create new ideas, and more importantly, we create your new employees. And we have two materials folks, one representing the historical strength and materials of this region, Cleveland Cliffs, and another representing the new chapter for Ohio and the Silicon Belt, Intel. And finally, we have a representative from NASA, an important part of our ecosystem representing our federal investment in research and in discovery. And our base case is very strong. I think we have a map that will come up in a minute that illustrates the diverse pool of research activity that we have across the region. Almost $4 billion in spending in research, 2/3 of that from industry. Over $2 billion in venture capital investment in the region over the past several years, and that goes into small business creation and growth. So before turning to the panel for comments, I would like to really highlight two things on the academic side that are important and really highlight how research and development is so critically important to the future of Cleveland and of this region. The first is the Cleveland Innovation District, with collaboration with Jobs Ohio, Case Western Reserve, Cleveland State, the Cleveland Clinic, University Hospitals, and Metro Health. And thank you to the Lieutenant Governor for the important leadership with Jobs Ohio in creating that opportunity. It's a $565 million effort with the state of Ohio and Jobs Ohio providing $265 million of funding. Throughout that effort, our particular work at Case Western will be devoted to increasing our federal research expenditures by 50%, from $400 to $600 million of spend each year. That's a terrific surrogate for the intensity of innovation and creativity that we put in place, and we're eager to make that investment in the future that we all will share together. An important part of that is creation of a new $300 million integrated science and engineering building on the Case Quad that will both open that Case Quad to the community and create a space for terrific collaborations and growth. And that will be a key part of the innovation ecosystem in Cleveland, which at the university represents an integrated science and engineering effort, the ThinkBox makerspace, largest public makerspace in Ohio, and the building formerly known as the BioE building, which will be a home for incubator space. We estimate an economic impact of $3 billion from those efforts and the creation ultimately of 20,000 new jobs. The second point that I will illustrate is the recent award from the National Science Foundation of a planning grant for what is called an Engines grant. And the focus of that is development of a community that really focuses on sustainability, the ability to create in a sustainable way the things that people use, the energy that people consume, the advanced materials that are needed to drive sustainable engineering and manufacturing. And we expect that will translate to practice and to workforce development. The core partners in that are about a dozen from around the region, and many of them are corporate partners represented by this organization. So both of these are all-in examples, and it's why I personally am exceptionally optimistic about the continued growth of innovation and innovation partnerships in Northeast Ohio. So with that bit of table setting, let me now turn to my colleagues and begin to explore with you some of the aspects of the R&D ecosystem that's critical to the work that we need to do to move forward. So let me ask first April, from the Intel point of view, maybe you can tell us a little bit about the Ohio ecosystem for scale up and development of the supply chain that you will need for Ohio.
Absolutely, thank you. First of all, it's great to be back in Cleveland. I'm all in as well, as you know. It's great to be back and see so many friendly faces. So Intel is investing. We're building a fab for about $20 billion just down in Columbus and New Albany. We are really excited about that. We are just getting ready to start pouring concrete. And we're really happy to be a part of the ecosystem that's really driving a lot of economic opportunity and development in the state. And so we already have more than 100 suppliers that we're partnering with that have joined us in Ohio, and we expect to have many, many more. And we spend about $17 billion a year on research and development, and a lot of that we do by partnering with other organizations. The research and development for semiconductors obviously is critically important. We are the last US company that both designs and manufactures leading edge semiconductors. So it goes back to the point made by the Lieutenant Governor just about the importance of semiconductors to our economy and making sure that we can do those in the United States. And so maybe just one example of collaboration that we're doing, semiconductors go into data centers, which drive a lot of compute power, so there's lots of machinery in those data centers, and it's very densely packed. And you know how your phone gets hot or your computer gets hot when you're driving a lot of compute power. We have been working with Lubrizol and developing a solution to, basically it's a cooling system, and the products are immersed in a liquid, and it drives cooling for the data center. So really important as data centers are continuing to grow, and the compute power that is necessary for data centers continues to increase. So if we can cool those systems down, it just allows to have much more densely packed equipment in those centers. So critically important. That's one great example of how we're partnering.
That's terrific. That's terrific. Thank you. Jimmy, one of my favorite sayings is that the road to Mars goes through Cleveland. And so maybe you can talk a little bit about the ecosystem around Glenn Laboratories that talks about connections that are important to you.
Thanks, Eric, and it's certainly a pleasure to be here. As one of our newest Clevelanders, it's amazing what this city brings to offer, and just the innovation and the great work and the talent that's here and the capabilities that are here. At NASA, obviously, you probably all saw back in November the Artemis 1 rocket lift off on its way to the moon, the first time since 1972. And I had the pleasure and really the privilege to be there on the launch, and we talk about inspired. Hearing our launch director, Charlie Blackwell Thompson, the first female, the first woman to serve as a launch director in NASA's history, and her poise as she announced and her excitement as she announced that we were going was truly inspiring. But then to hear the stories of the people and how they had worked so long and hard on the technologies and the innovations that brought that launch to bear so many years later. So you think ahead, technology and innovation is what we do at NASA, and if you look at our sign as you enter, it says research and technology for the benefit of all. And we really do believe that and live by that, and so you think ahead, well, where are we going as we look at the road to Mars? What do we need to get there? Well, we need things like power, we need propulsion, we need communications, things that we take for granted here on the surface of the Earth, but they're not so easy to do if you're on the surface of the moon. Staying on the surface of the moon, living and working on the surface of the moon, and then going on to Mars. Things like, we call it in situ resource utilization, but how you can tap into the resources that are there on the surface of the moon or the surface of Mars and turn those things into things that you can use to sustain people and then to develop propellants to launch you back off of the surface. Those are the technologies that we're starting to work on now, and that's really where our innovation space is. It takes time to take some of those hard problems, but that's NASA's role. We can work on the hard problems where businesses may not be able to close that business case today, but we can partner with businesses on how to innovate and how to create solutions to those hard problems so that we can bring them forward for the future.
It's terrific. And Tracy, I know that sustainability is near and dear to the future of Cleveland Cliffs. Maybe you could talk a little bit about sustainability and its connection to the R&D ecosystem in the area.
Sure. I'm honored to represent Cleveland Cliffs and be here with all of you today. A big part of our sustainability efforts has been to explain who we are and what we do. We're a 175-year-old miner. We provide have over those 175 years provided the raw materials to steel companies. About 3 years ago, we consolidated 2 of our customers to become a steel company ourselves. And through that consolidation, we've been able to optimize our assets. And through that, really optimize our production and planning. And along with that, we started up a direct reduction plant in Toledo, Ohio. It was a $1 billion investment. And that's really been a linchpin to our success. We set a goal for 25% reduction of greenhouse gases by 2030. Proud to report that we have achieved that goal in this year. And that is through optimizing our assets, running our mills responsibly, using the product that we make in Toledo, and driving down greenhouse gases. A lot of this can't be done alone as a company. We have to collaborate with the academic institutions. We need to train workforce. And we've also been very involved with the Department of Energy, because to take the blast furnaces to the next stage, we need things like carbon capture, hydrogen hubs, electrification. We need more power. We need to re-energize the grid in this country. So we're working behind the scenes and not so behind the scenes on a lot of those fronts.
Terrific teamwork all the way across. It is indeed a team sport. Many of the folks in the audience today are from large companies, multinational companies, but many others are from smaller companies. Maybe each of you could talk a little bit about how you engage with small company partnering with SBIR or STTR programs, or beginning to identify niches where they could intersect your overall strategy. So Jimmy, I know that at NASA you've done some of that. Maybe you could lead us off in that space.
Absolutely. We have the ability through multiple mechanisms to partner with large companies and small companies. And in many ways, it's a way to partner so that we can invest to take down the risk. And it also helps, especially for the large companies, it helps the large companies to be able to invest as well. But we have some mechanisms, and Eric, you mentioned the SBIR. That's a Small Business Innovation Research program, which is it's really a small business set-aside that is specifically there to allow small businesses to approach the government to bid technologies to solve government problems. The intellectual property terms are very favorable to the small businesses, with the goal of eventually allowing that business or that company to turn around and develop a product that they can sell to the government or really to anyone else for that matter. There's a tangent to that called the Small Business Technology Transfer Program, and the acronym doesn't quite work out, but that's STTR, that does the same thing, but it involves a significant contribution from a university partner. Mm-hmm. And those are a couple of mechanisms that we can work with, and we have a call every year, and our companies and our businesses are able to bid on those and then work with, and many times partner with our folks at the lab at Glenn to be able to develop those technologies, to test them in our facilities, and we have an array of different agreements that we can use to do that as well. So it's a wonderful vehicle. You know, a lot of these are startups. They're high risk but high payoff, and we see them many times either develop into businesses. Zen Technologies here is one that has been successful through that route. Others are bought by other larger businesses as a way to capture the intellectual property, and so there's a long history of success with that program.
So April, you mentioned the collaboration with Lubrizol,
Sure.
A company founded by a Case graduate, by the way, I have to tell you. 3 of them, actually. But talk to us a little bit about how Intel finds and creates those partnerships. Obviously, Lubrizol is a big company. You went to them, I imagine, for their expertise. But do you have an ecosystem of connecting with others that bring opportunities forward?
We do. Good question. So I know you probably know this, but not everyone will. But you know, we really started off as a company in 1968, founded by 3 entrepreneurs, 3 engineers who left a big company and wanted to kind of go off on their own and do their own research. And so they started Intel in Silicon Valley, which then really was not Silicon Valley. It became Silicon Valley because of Intel. And so that is very much a part of our roots, is engineering and research and development. And so we have an arm that is our Intel capital arm. Some people would call it corporate venture. And a lot of it's run by our strategy team, but a lot of our engineers, we have Intel Labs, work very closely, and we have Intel Fellows, which are some of our most senior researchers. They work very closely. They find companies, they find developers, they find entrepreneurs who may be doing their own individual research that we're really interested in. It could be adjacent to us, it could be in our, not quite in our sweet space or not quite in our industry, but something related to compute or software. It could be energy saving, and we have about 300 investments, over the years in, small companies through our ICAP arm. And we provide resources to them, but we also learn a lot from them. So we provide talent and funding, and I think we have a great partnership with a lot of those companies. And sometimes they have great exits, and sometimes they decide, to tweak their model and, start a new company and go on and do something else. Mm-hmm. But it's been great for us.
So, Tracy, I know that at Cleveland Cliffs, again, the green steel on a blue lake and the hydrogen hub elements that you mentioned are large group efforts in which you're playing a critical role. Do you also find an easy way to interact with smaller companies, or is that more of a challenge in the big industrial steel space?
No, I think we work with the large and the small companies. I think the smaller companies have a role in supporting our integrated steel mills and plants and choosing vendors from the community. So I do think we have a good mix, and it's really about the reliability of the company, not so much about the size.
Okay.
So.
Terrific. So these are good things that we've been doing and positive opportunities. Let me spin a little bit and talk about some of the things that might be just a tiny bit less than perfect in the world in which we all find ourselves. So let's talk a little bit about what the region can be doing to increase its innovation capacity and impact, whether that's physical space, whether that's infrastructure. The Lieutenant Governor mentioned the unemployment rate in Ohio, more jobs than people. I think all of us compete desperately, particularly in the wake of the Great Resignation, to fill jobs and fill jobs with the right people. So talk a little bit about what those barriers are and what as a region we might do collectively to help advance everyone for the common good. So April, let me put you on the spot first.
Sure, no, happy to talk about it. I think, the Lieutenant Governor did a nice job of covering some really key topics around collaboration. And I think historically as a region, we didn't have such a great reputation of seeing the kind of collaboration that we really need to have to compete and win against communities that are much larger than we are and have, in some ways, deeper pockets. I think when you see all of the organizations come together, so I love seeing the innovation hubs that the state, I think, really kind of pushed us into saying, hey, I'm only going to fund this if you guys collaborate, right? And really making sure that we are creating an ecosystem around whether it's a specific area that people are doing research and development in, or it's broader based, I think, like it is in Cleveland. We have healthcare, we have water, we have materials. And so I love seeing those innovation hubs. I think we can't go it alone. I think the collaboration piece is so incredibly important. And one of the reasons that Intel chose Ohio, and I wasn't there then, so I didn't make these decisions, but a really big part of it was the educational institutions. So the historic manufacturing base and having that strong workforce that really knew how to do advanced manufacturing, but also this concept that you had all of these universities and other institutions of higher ed in this ecosystem that they could see would work together across Ohio. And so I think we just have to continue that collaboration and not feel like it's a zero-sum game. If you win, then I lose. We all need to be really working together, thinking about how do we best use our resources so that we don't have, TRACI trying to replicate what Lorain Community College is already doing. And I think they've done a great job of demonstrating that collaboration is possible.
Terrific. Jimmy, any thoughts? What could we do better?
Well, I think each one of us brings something a little bit different to the table, and it's looking at what we bring to the table and bringing it out and making it available. And so with NASA, we talked about the road to Mars and it going through Northeast Ohio. And so when you look at that and you think about the possibilities and the research and technology that we're doing, we have folks inventing new things. I would like to say every day, but sometimes invention's a little bit tougher than that. But making that available for the businesses and making that greater vision available for our businesses and our universities to have access to it. And one of the challenges, quite frankly, is that if you have never worked with the government before, it's hard to work with the government. Just understanding the forms and everything else, it's tough. And so some of the things that we've done, and we've worked with some of the businesses in here and some of the innovation groups in here on things like outreach to say, well, here's how you apply for a small business innovation research program. Here's how you apply for a license for some of our technologies, making the community aware of our technologies. Outreach like today, quite frankly, just to make folks aware that NASA Glenn is right here in Cleveland, and there's a whole lot of stuff at NASA Glenn that this community can access. We have, for example, a material. It's called GRX 810, invented by our researchers using integrated computational materials engineering. It's a high-temperature nickel superalloy that has better characteristics than today's best nickel alloys. We've got 13 active licenses, and I've got a number more in my queue to sign, and it's not just for aerospace applications, it's for all sorts of applications. Making people aware of that and then helping people through that licensing process is an example, but each one of us has things like that we can bring to bear.
Tracy, thoughts on what could be better for the steel industry in Northeast Ohio?
Well, things are going rather well in the steel industry today. I think that we can always do a better job of explaining who we are, what we do, that making steel is a high-tech job in today's day and age. And we're trying to do that, so we are recruiting. We are investing in programs like Magnet to reshore manufacturing, and we invest in breakthrough schools. So we're starting with the STEM student, STEM at a young age and throughout, and we work with Case Western. We're working closely with the University of Toledo on our Great Lakes Clean Hydrogen Hub initiative. I think it's really getting the message out about all that we have to offer here in the Great Lakes region.
So let me build a little bit on Jimmy's comment. I think we all smiled on reflection of the paperwork necessary to deal with the government. I represent an industry also known for a heavy amount of paperwork to deal with. And I would just echo what the Lieutenant Governor said about intellectual property transfer and Jimmy said with respect to the federal government. We have really simplified and eliminated almost all of the barriers associated to transferring intellectual property from universities to companies of all sizes. So if you have shopped with us before and left unsatisfied, come back and try again. The barriers are lower, and we are in fact open for business. A university's job is to create and discover. Business's job is to turn those creations and discoveries into products for the service of mankind. It's really that simple, and we get it. We have a history, of course, of trying to paper up a situation on the off chance that if somebody's invention might lead to a product that led to a sale that led to a profit, and God forbid we don't get our share of that profit. We've left that mindset in the last century, and I'd encourage you to come work with us some more. We'd love to have our faculty and our researchers at Glenn and elsewhere in the federal government begin to be partners with you in meaningful ways to move towards solutions. So let me finish us up. We've got about 5 minutes left or so I'm going to do a little bit of a lightning round with each one of you. Where we are in innovation and invention is a personal journey. All of us have been down that path in different ways. So maybe reflect a little bit, each of you, on the critical decision in your path, whether it was a mentor, whether it was an experience, whether it was a good experience or a bad experience, an opportunity that opened. And I'll start off to give you a chance to think a little bit about it. For me, it was a wonderful combination of a great chemistry teacher and a great father who let me take apart things like his single lens reflex camera and didn't get real mad when I put it back together with parts left over. So I had a very generous upbringing, and that led me into a career of engineering, which led me into a career of helping other people do engineering, which led me into leading universities. So to me, it started at a very early point. Others have had different starts and different inflections, and we'll go from April on down.
Sure. So although I was born and raised in Cleveland, I moved away for high school, and I spent a significant amount of time in Detroit, and so really close to the automotive industry. And I went to college in Michigan as well. Sorry, guys. But I had an opportunity while I was there to do summer internships with a number of automotive companies. And the first company that I worked with was Saturn, and they were a brand new company. They weren't making cars yet. And during all of my internships, we had an opportunity to visit the plants. And so for me, it was all about really being in manufacturing, being on the plant floor. This is that, they were affiliated with General Motors, so we would go visit the spark plug plants and all different types of systems that were going into automobiles. And I was fascinated because I really had not grown up in manufacturing. And so really since then, I've been on a journey for manufacturing. I've always loved manufacturing. And I think advanced manufacturing, again, is really critical to what we do. And at heart, at Intel, we're a manufacturing company. We make very, very sophisticated chips. I would say maybe the most sophisticated manufacturing in the world. But at the end of the day, we are a manufacturing company. And that was really what caused my CEO to recruit me to Intel, is he really wanted a GC who really understood and had a passion for manufacturing. And so for us, a big part of what we're doing is we've announced that we're spending $100 million as a part of our investment in Ohio, investing in education, because we really want to make sure that students everywhere get exposure and have an opportunity to think about how technology and innovation can lead them to a career that really drives their passion. Of course, we're hoping that it's in semiconductors and materials.
Terrific. Tracy?
For me, I think it's been a most recent opportunity. I've always said, when asked, you got to recognize opportunities and take that leap, even if you're not in your comfort zone. And for a decade at Cliffs, I was in the legal department and worked on all kinds of transactions. But I was at my desk most of that time. And so then I was asked to take on business development, which then shortly led to environmental and sustainability, where I get out into the plants, like April was mentioning, and you just get a greater, deeper sense of what it is we do day in and day out, the importance of manufacturing for Ohio and for our country, and then add to that the sustainability and the exposure. I think the best part about the sustainability role is the openness to collaboration and companies and institutions and a willingness to share like never before. And so that has really been tremendous for me personally, but also I think for the region. There's a lot of opportunities, hopefully, coming our way.
Perfect. Jimmy, finish us up.
Sure. So if you talk to anybody in aerospace, they almost all have that moment that they can share with you where they said, yeah, that's it for me. And for many of our more seasoned folks, it was watching the Apollo landings.
I'm sure.
For me, I'm a child of the Cold War, and I watched the movies, Top Gun, Iron Eagle, and then I grew up in a small town in South Georgia and would be playing outside, and we lived near a dam and a big lake, and the jets would come and do exercises over the lake. And I said, I want to do that. I was going to be a zipper-suited sun god, and I was going to fly fast jets. Turned out I was not able to do that, but nevertheless, I was in aerospace, and I was hooked. And I went to Georgia Tech as an aerospace engineer, and I am still a card-carrying aerospace engineer. As the Cold War peace dividends set out, I stayed the course because I wanted to be an aerospace engineer. And as luck would have it, that was there for me. I did swear I was never going to work in defense, so my first job out of college was the Air Force as a civilian. And since then, it's been a journey, but every time driven by a passion to serve and a passion to make things fly. And it's a beautiful thing to see an airplane or a spacecraft take off. And I never go to work a day without being thrilled with what I do.
Well, terrific. Thank you all for sharing that with the group. It's meaningful and I think maybe inspirational to see how you all have progressed to such significant points in your careers. So please join me in thanking our panelists.
Thank you.